So let me welcome your participants to this afternoon's launch of the ARUA Profiles Report. I'm very happy that all the vice chancellors whose universities participated in the project are all online and will be speaking to the report and also speaking to their engagement with ARUA in the course of today's program. What I will do is tell you participants briefly about the project that we are launching, the report of which we are launching. Essentially, this project began as one that was being sponsored by Carnegie Corporation of New York over the past 3 years. And why this project? The main reason for doing this is to basically help ARUA to achieve its objectives and also be able to use that for advocacy purposes. So ARUA is working to enhance the quantity and the quality of research at African universities. That's really what has brought us together to make us globally competitive. So the quality of research, the quantity of research, the main thing driving us. We seek to improve on graduate training and also strengthen research management. So graduate training, research management are two other pillars. And finally, we believe that effective research advocacy will allow many people to understand and appreciate how much research is done in Africa. Everyone needs to show that it can make a significant difference in achieving the above over a given period. People are anxious to know what difference ARUA makes to higher education in Africa. We need to find the evidence. But we're also aware that in many of our universities, there isn't much of a structure in place that allows them to provide the data and also analyze it properly, and that will allow for comparison across institutions. So we need to do this. This project basically helps us to overcome the challenges. It helps us to build the capacity and also put in place what interventions are necessary to allow us to be able to show the world what ARUA has achieved. The project allows ARUA to build the capacity of member universities, those that are lacking in it. It has allowed us to work with experienced consultants. Basically, they helped us to determine what data was needed. They helped us to establish the system in place in our universities in order to put together the data we use for performance monitoring. We had a workshop in Addis Ababa in January 2018, where this was agreed on. We trained in some of the universities individuals who helped with the data gathering and also the analysis. It was done at 2 levels in terms of the analysis. At the local level, within the universities, this was first done. It allowed for internal decision-making to take place. And then centrally, which is what we are about to launch today, the performance report is going to be a major tool for university management to make necessary adjustments when necessary in policy making, and also help us to become more globally competitive. The project will allow ARUA to tell its story. There are many who want to know whether the creation of ARUA as a network is making any difference or not. So that's what we seek to do. The template is available or will be available on our website, and any African university can use it for its own purposes. Any university desirous of joining ARUA later will be required to provide such data. And so it's important that we stick with it. Obviously, there's a question of whether research in Africa is rising or not. There's work that have been published by some of our allies in this endeavor. So the work, this publication here shows that the South African universities especially are very much rising and very much moving faster towards becoming globally competitive. But the evidence also shows that the other universities like Makerere, like Ghana, Lagos, but are moving up steadily. The challenge for ARUA is how to break this gap, the gap that you saw how to reduce that gap here. And that hopefully within the next 5 years, we will see evidence of these universities rising much faster than they are doing today. And the data that we are gathering will make it possible for us to share with the wider public what's happening. We are also going to gather more data for the future that will show clear examples of what is happening in our universities. So this chart here very much shows what each ARUA university did as part of its contribution to dealing with the pandemic. So you see clearly what various, the University of Ghana sequencing the COVID-19 genome is a good example. Dar es Salaam producing automatic hand washing machines is a very good example. We will document all of these. What this project has allowed us to do is to build a structure in each university that would then help us to put together the material more effectively and more quickly than has been the case over the years. So in conclusion, basically, research in Africa is rising and ARUA is leading the way. Higher education in Africa is going to evolve beyond the traditional norms that we've become used to. And then collaboration, as we are pursuing within ARUA, will be the key to change in the future. But I do hope that those of us who have been lucky enough to be associated with this process will appreciate the changes that are taking place. We'll see how such a collaboration can lead to growth of African higher education. So I thank all of you for joining us. I see that there are 123 participants so far, and the number is steadily rising. We expect over 300 people will join us in the course of the day. It's now my honor to invite the chair of the board of ARUA to give us a few words before Professor Ouma, our main consultant, does a presentation of the report. So Professor Barnabas Nawanwe is the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University in Uganda, and he's the chairman of the board of ARUA. Over to you, Barnabas.
Thank you very much, Ernest, and thank you very much for your brief but concise introduction of this topic. I think, as Ernest said, we in Africa are lagging behind in the area of knowledge production, at least by the internationally published statistics. And the research universities in Africa said, no, we cannot accept this to continue. And that's why ARUA was formed. ARUA was formed for the major purpose of utilizing synergies between the research universities so that we can make a more meaningful contribution to knowledge production globally. And of course, increasing on our research and the publications and innovations. I think since ARUA was formed, we have made very good strides in this area. We are already collaborating very well under the 13 centers of excellence that were created by ARUA, and we are beginning to get international recognition from various areas that probably were not looking at each individual university previously. So ARUA is the step in the right direction, and I think ARUA is going to help us to move much faster towards the goal that we have set ourselves. He has said we are making steady progress, but I think the progress is rather slow. It is, I think, still unacceptable that all of us African universities are publishing less than a small country in Europe. It is just not acceptable. We really have to do a lot to close this gap between Africa and the rest of the world. It is quite a task, but I know it can be done. The exercise that we undertook of profiling the universities is extremely important because it helps us to look back and say, oh, so this is what we are. What do we need in order to make the improvements that Ernest is talking about? So I want to thank the consultant that undertook this study and coming up with the DVCs who came up with the template. It is a very useful template, and I'm glad that it is available for all universities that would want from time to time to review their own status. So I want to thank all the universities that participated, and I want to thank all the members of ARUA for the resilience that you have so far shown and for the spirit of collaboration that you have shown. Our collaboration is beginning to bear fruit, and I think we should just carry on in that direction. So I believe that we are all very anxious to receive the results of the survey that was done on our universities as a phase 1, and as Ernest has said, there will be a phase 2 to show us if anything has changed in the successor period. So with those few words, I want to thank everybody that has joined this very important webinar. And just like you, I'm anxious to listen to the consultant to tell us where we stand, what we need to do in order to improve. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Barnabas. Thank you very much. May I now invite Professor Gerald Ouma from the University of Pretoria to present to us the main report. Gerald, we can't hear you. Gerald, are you muted?
Ernest?
Yes, okay, now we hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we do, yes.
Thank you, thank you. I hope my screen is showing. I can't see. Is it showing?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, thank you. First of all, just to thank you, Ernest, and the entire ARUA fraternity for the opportunity to be involved in this project. I found it profoundly empowering, getting to learn about what's going on at the leading universities on the continent. Of course, it was the second time I was being involved in this kind of exercise. The first time I did this was as part of the Herana project, and I'm glad to see Nico Kluter here, one of my mentors. I see appears as Peter Masson, but I can also see Peter Masson is here with us. And again, thank you, Ernest, for the context that you've provided. Just as the outline, I'm going to briefly discuss the objectives of the. Thank you. Now I can see the screen better. I'm struggling to move this thing. Okay, the objectives of the project, briefly look at the participating institutions, then briefly talk about some of the key trends that that came out of the analysis, and then a brief conclusion. Now, these were the objectives of the project, to collect data against selected indicators. The process of identifying the indicators was a collaborative one. It was an iterative one. As Ernest mentioned, it started in Addis Ababa in 2018. Then I sat down with my team, identified those indicators, sent back the list to the institutions, and then there was consensus on the indicators against which we should collect data. Then the second goal was to identify gaps in institutional capacity to gather and analyze data, to build capacity, and then to establish a collective database. As Ernest has mentioned, a number of these will be pursued further in the second phase of the project. Now, I'm trying to move to the second. Yes, in terms of the significance of the project, again, Ernest has touched on this. The obvious one, of course, is to benchmark to see how we compare, as ARUA universities. For tracking performance, this is vitally important, be they institutional, tracking performance against institutional goals or targets. ARUA goals and targets and national goals, identifying areas that might require interventions, and then setting targets. Then also, naturally, when you do this kind of thing, the hope is that it's going to support an evidence/data-driven decision-making process, driving institutional change. As you'll see in the data, there's quite a number of interesting trends that we need to discuss. For example, the representation of women, the question around postdoctoral fellows, and quite a number of other interesting trends that we need to look at, and also for steering alignment with ARUA's objectives and national policy imperatives. Now, these are the participating institutions, 13 of them, as I've indicated in the report. Not all of them gave us data for all the indicators across all the 3 years that we looked at. So, for example, Sheikh Anta Diop University gave us data for only 1 year. University of Dar es Salaam, gave us data for only 2 years. And as you'll see, you've seen in the report, there's some gaps in terms of the data that we see from across the universities. So University of Nairobi gave us data, but they could not verify it when we asked them to look at it. That's why it's not captured here. And Obafemi Awolowo, which I understand has since exited ARUA, did not respond to a request for data. Now, if we could go straight to the data itself in terms of student enrollments, the major finding, which finding is also the main one in the Herana analysis, is that the majority of our universities on the continent, and ARUA universities included, could be classified as predominantly undergraduate universities. University of Ibadan is an outlier in this case, sitting at around 47.4% of its student population being postgraduate. Now, you'll see in the report that we've got postgraduate students as a collective, which brings together students who are enrolled in postgraduate programs and a master's degrees. And this is more pronounced in the context of South Africa, where we've got honors students, which is a significant percentage of students in South African universities. So if you look at the doctoral enrollments, again, it's the same trend. Of course, it's expected in a number of universities that this is likely to be the smallest proportion of postgraduate students or just students at large. The percentages are fairly stable, a few fluctuations here and there, not many challenges over the 3-year period. Ibadan, again, leading the pack, sitting at 12.1% in 2017. And you'll see I'm looking for University of Addis Ababa. I think it's, let me lower this so I can see properly. Sorry, I've just, I can't now see my own slides. I don't know what I did. Anyway, the key point here, colleagues, is that the doctoral enrollments are fairly stable. They're very low, but quite stable across the various years. Next slide, please. And if you look at those enrollments by field of study, very, very interesting trends emerge. You'll see, for example, at the University of Ghana and Stellenbosch, the largest proportion of M&D, the largest proportion of M&D students. Sorry, I think you're moving very fast. If you could go 2 steps back, please. Is that Emmanuel? Yes, let's stay here fast. So you'll see, for example, that the majority of students at the University of Ghana, masters and doctoral students for that matter, are enrolled in business, economics, and management sciences. And this is the one single most, the highest proportion across all the universities in any one single university field. Now you'll see at Rhodes University, most of them are in natural sciences. At about 3 universities, Rhodes, UCT, and I think Ibadan, they don't have any enrollments in agricultural sciences. And then you'll see, for example, at University of Makerere, UCT, and WITS, they've got a significant a proportion of their students enrolled in medical and health sciences. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of enrollment by gender, this is a very, it's not a very positive picture, so to speak, but this is even better if you look at some of the trends that we see across the other elements. But the general trend here that is shown here is that women are generally underrepresented in postgraduate programs, especially in M&D. But let me add, if you look at the total postgraduate enrollment, where honors students and postgraduate diplomas are included, you see that in South Africa, almost all the 6 universities, the total postgraduate enrollment is in favor of women in terms of their representation, quite strong, which suggests that there is in fact a strong pipeline for female students in South African universities. There seems to be some kind of challenges, so to speak, in terms of converting that into high enrollments in master's and doctoral programs. Next slide, please. Then if you look at enrollment, M&D by field of study, we see pockets of concentration or segregation depending on how one wants to look at it. We see female students having a relatively stronger representation in the social sciences, in the humanities, and in the medical and health sciences. I need to apologize, in the report we don't mention the medical and health sciences. We mentioned the business, economics, and management sciences. Yes, there's a strong representation of women in BEMS as well, but there seems to be, as the second bullet point shows, a very, very strong representation of women in medical and health sciences at the University of Ibadan, at Stellenbosch, at UCT, at the University of Pretoria, at Wits, and at Lagos. Now, if you look at their representation in engineering, the numbers don't look very good. Next slide, please. Now, if you look at the doctoral graduates by gender, we almost, see the same pattern where female graduates are represented, pretty much across all the universities. But this underrepresentation is more pronounced at the University of Ghana, at the University of Ibadan, Makerere, and Addis Ababa. And Makerere, you'll see when we look at the Hirana data compared to what we have here, there seems to be a slight decline that happened in between. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of postdoctoral research fellows, we only obtain data from the South African universities and Makerere. And the picture is what you can see here. Across the 3 years, there seems to be progressive growth in the number of postdoctoral fellows. Stellenbosch, UKZN, has the highest number of postdoctoral fellows. If you look at their 2017 numbers, sitting at 385. Again, as I mentioned, the other universities could not give us data for this. Next slide, please. Now, very interesting trends in terms of academic staff. So if you look at the percentage of permanent academic staff with doctorates, the majority of the universities, most of the academics at more than 50%, have PhDs. University of Addis Ababa is a bit of an exception in this case, where the bulk of the academic staff, just under 30% of them have PhDs. University of Ghana has done very, very well. Ibadan as well has done very well. And the other South African universities as well, if you look at UCT, at UP, and also at Stellenbosch University. If you look at the permanent academic staff who are women, again, we see some underrepresentation of women here. It's more pronounced at the University of Addis Ababa and at University of Ghana. But then if you look at the University of Rhodes University and UP, they seem to be doing quite well, with more than 50% of the academic staff being women. UCT, UKZN, Stellenbosch quite close to getting to the 50% threshold. Next slide, please. Now, again, this is a very interesting one. If you look at professors, associate professors, senior lecturers as a percentage of permanent academic staff, the data is as you can see there. UCT is a very interesting one. There's 74% of the academics are professors, associate professors, and senior lecturers. This is quite interesting if you look at their proportion of staff with PhDs. So it would suggest that UCT has got a portion of their staff who do not have PhDs, who are senior lecturers, who are associate professors, who are full professors, and who are doing research, because in these institutions, research is a very important criteria for one to become a senior academic. We don't see the same pattern across the other universities. So if you look at the University of Ghana, for example, sitting with almost 80% of the academic staff with PhDs, just under 50% of the academic staff are either professors, associate professors, or senior lecturers. In some of the other universities, like the University of Pretoria, the trend is almost the same, where the portion of academics with PhDs is also the same portion of academics who are senior lecturers and above. Next slide, please. In terms of research funding, very, very interesting. We saw some fluctuations, but the important point here is actually the sources of the funding. So quite a number of the universities are quite dependent on funding coming from outside of the continent. Universities like UCT, Wits, Rhodes, they're leveraging funding from outside of the continent, doing a fantastic job there. Now, we deliberately included funding from within the continent, and the results are quite interesting. So we've seen that quite a number of the universities have not leveraged this funding as such, but there are about 3 universities, Wits University, University of Addis Ababa University, and Makerere University? Yes, that have done a fantastic job leveraging funding from within the continent. So the funding fluctuates, the levels of resource dependency varies. The most prominent funders are your research councils and international agencies and foundations, and also government funding. Next slide, please. In terms of patents, again, this is the picture that we have here, where Stellenbosch is way ahead of the pack in terms of the number of patents that they have registered, sitting at 54 in 2017. We've got University of Ibadan sitting at 5, and then in between we've got UCT sitting with 14 registered patents, and then Wits with 32. I think Wits has the second highest number of registered patents. The next one, please. So in conclusion, colleagues, the picture that the data shows is that, number one, as we've already said, most of our universities are predominantly undergraduate universities. University of Ibadan is close to almost a 50% or split, but quite a number of the universities, the population, and it's understandable for historical reasons, is predominantly undergraduates. Now, the share of permanent academic staff with doctorates, it varies, as I mentioned, from 29.9% to 77%. And again, if you look at the representation of women across the universities, women are actually underrepresented across most of the universities, with only 2 universities having more than 50% of the academic staff as women. Now, the underrepresentation of women is also quite pronounced in senior academic positions. So for example, if you look at full professors, these range from 2.5% to 32%. And then also this underrepresentation, we see it in postgraduate enrollments, especially in master's and doctoral programs. And also, as I mentioned earlier, in engineering and technology, there seems to be points of concentration in especially health and medical sciences in some of the institutions, but mostly in social sciences and the humanities. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gerald. I may now invite Professor Peter Masson from the University of Oslo to comment on the presentation that we've just received.
Thank you very much, Professor Arietti, and thank you very much, Gerald Alma, for the presentation. And I want to congratulate ARUA and its member universities with the launching of the report. It shows the willingness, the capacity of the Alliance to produce relevant data. And these data provide insights into the development of the ARUA member universities in the first 2 years of its existence. And a number of the challenges that are presented in the report are, of course, very recognizable also outside Africa. Universities around the world are facing important challenges. And one of the ways in dealing with these challenges is to establish strong networks of alliances. And these alliances are very well positioned to have an internal and an external function in helping the universities to move forward. And through ARUA, also African universities are now part of this global science policy arena, where policy issues, policy trends, policy debates are taking place. And that doesn't only bring opportunities for ARUA, but also responsibilities because of its potential impact on the rest of higher education in Africa. And we see that in the report, major areas of concern are identified where ARUA as an alliance, its member universities intend to prioritize certain policies, for example, the lack of sufficient postdoctoral fellow positions, which has an impact on career opportunities of young talented scholars in Africa, gender imbalances in master and PhD doctoral programs, as well as in senior academic positions where women are underrepresented, and issues around personnel policies. How do we promote the incorporation of staff with PhD and tenured positions, how to promote research orientation, success in external funding, etc. So the report is valuable also from a benchmarking perspective, because it provides important insights into differences, similarities in the transformation of the member universities of ARUA, which are the leading research universities of the continent. And having said that, of course, a major question is, how can this report help to move ARUA forward, to support ARUA in further developing its activities, its strategies, its measures in being the first research university alliance in Africa. And I want to emphasize a number of perspectives that come out of the report and out of Professor Alma's presentation. First, the mandate and aims of ARUA as an alliance. How can the report help ARUA in its further development as an alliance? Alliances, as indicated, have become important structures for university collaboration, but there's also a wide variety in alliances around the world. We have the Russell Group referred to in the report, which is a national alliance of elite universities in Britain. We have the Guild, a partner of ARUA in Europe. We have the European University Initiative Alliances, a structure, an innovative structure in Europe that also ARUA is very interested in. So different kinds of aims and mandates we find in these alliances, and where does ARUA fit in, and how does the report contribute to developing ARUA's profile and strategies. The report, as indicated, has important opportunities and challenges for ARUA to further enhance research quality, graduate education in its member universities and in Africa in general. And there are priorities that ARUA and its members want to address urgently. And of course, it's important to identify which of these priorities can be addressed by ARUA and its members, and which require important changes in national and continental environments, context of ARUA and its members. So here, the report also gives an insight into why and how advocacy and also policy orientation of ARUA and its members should be strengthened and further developed. So how, for example, can ARUA influence development of science policies in Africa, and to some extent in the agreements between Africa and other parts of the world, that in a way that does justice to the priorities already identified in the report? How can ARUA as an alliance, for example, contribute to the strengthening of career opportunities of young scholars in Africa that are highly talented, but that now often, amongst other things, because of a lack of postdoctoral positions, move outside the continent? Here, I can point to the collaboration and the joint policy initiative of ARUA with the Guild of European Research Universities that provide a clear frame of reference for the potential strength of ARUA as the first African University Alliance as a science policy actor. Amongst other things, the introduction of the ARISE program by the African Union and the European Union, coordinated by the African Academy of Sciences, is an important indication of the enormous potential of ARUA, given that ARUA had an input in the development of the ideas underlying the program, as well as its implementation. One important key policy issue, science policy issue, is research funding, referred to in the report and also highlighted in the presentation by Gerald Auma. And most ARUA universities, as the report indicates, are currently strongly dependent for their research funding on agencies, on foundations, on donors, whether from Africa or from outside the continent. So what can be argued on the basis of the data is that compared to research universities in the rest of the world, African universities lack an appropriate competitive research funding environment. In Europe, we have, for example, since 2007, the prestigious European Research Council, which has in Europe often been referred to as the Champions League of European research programs. And the European universities are in heavy competition for funding from the ERC with all its prestige. And success in this competition has been extremely important for individual researchers. There are many universities in Europe which provide researchers with an ERC grant that do not have a full professor position, automatically a promotion towards a professor position because of their success here. And the success in the competition has also been very important for universities. There are, for example, 8 ERC researchers that have won a Nobel Prize. Oxford and Cambridge are very successful, obviously, but also many other research universities, through their success in this competitive research funding program, are able to strengthen their research output, their research quality, and their research profiling. The ARISE program is mentioned, inspired by the ERC, the first of its kind in Africa, an African-wide competitive research funding with scientific excellence of the candidates and his or her application as the main criteria for selecting projects and candidates to be funded. And I can sincerely hope that the candidates from ARUA Universities are successful in the first ARISE call, and that ARISE will be the first component for an African Research Council to be further developed. Another issue is that in focusing on research profiles of the ARUA member universities, the report provides a lot of relevant and insightful data. However, what is in the rest of the world used as a central research profile indicator, that is research outputs, scientific publication, is in essence lacking in the report. There are data on patents, but not on research publications. And here lies a major task for ARUA and its members in the further work on producing and presenting data on the transformation of ARUA universities. We know from the collaborative work on ARUA and the Guild, as indicated, in which both Professor Arieti and I are involved, the production of the ARISE program, etc. But we know that the European Union, the African Union are negotiating about a new cooperation, 7-year agreement program, and research is supposed to get a prominent position in this agreement with up to 20% of the earmarked funding. In the negotiations that are going on, there's a clear interest in developing a joint African-European program aimed at identifying and supporting clusters of excellence, of research excellence. Assuming that this interest will be materialized, one of the key data required for producing a successful application, obviously, is data on research output and on profiling. Also, from a benchmarking perspective, within ARUA as well as between ARUA universities and universities in other parts of the world, from an institutional research management perspective, from a research prioritizing perspective, the key lies in research output data. They are also of essence for further developing ARUA centers of excellence and for the ARUA member universities to identify, develop, support their own pockets of excellence. So what are, with these reflections and first kind of responses to the report and to Professor Auma's presentation, what are the ways forward? I want to be brief and mention 5 points that I think are important in moving from the report and relevant data to a further strategy in this. First, it's important that the ARUA members' institutional databases are strengthened. It's indicated as a report, as a challenge. There's an obvious task for ARUA to agree with its members on the further development of these institutional databases. And in this, as a second point, I think it's important to agree upon a set of key benchmark indicators, not more than 10, including research publications, in which the ARUA member universities agree these are the indicators that are important for us in strengthening our research management, strengthening our research quality, and in further developing our profiles. And how can we learn from each other in areas in which one or more of the members are successful, and potentially in a bit longer time frame, also in agreeing upon benchmarks and indicators with other universities, possibly in other parts of the world. In this, it's also of importance to identify a set of targets, a basic set of targets to be achieved by ARUA in the future. Let's say for the sake of the purpose here, 2030. So where does ARUA, where do the universities that are a member of ARUA want to be in 2030 when it comes to research profiling, strengthening graduate education, and how do the members of ARUA and ARUA itself see the way towards these targets? Very important. And from that perspective also, I would assume that there can be an interest in developing a capacity for monitoring and assessing the impact of ARUA on the alliance, as an alliance, on the research profiles and performance of the ARUA member universities. We know from alliances that have a somewhat longer history than ARUA that the alliance support can be extremely important for the member universities in developing their research profiles. And it would be good to get a clear understanding what the contribution of ARUA is, and also where ARUA could meet future needs of its members in the development of research profiles, research management, etc. And finally, I want to argue that this report could be a part of an ARUA series of publications, could be called position papers, it could be a variety of publications, but that would be aimed, amongst other things, at influencing science policy. Also here, we can look at other alliances, for example, the Guild, and it's very successful and influential series of papers that take up a whole lot of issues, not just science policy issues, but a whole lot of issues that are of interest to the members of the Alliance. So with that, I want to again congratulate ARUA with the publishing of the report, and I'm very optimistic about the future of ARUA and look forward to further further supporting the collaboration between ARUA and the Guild, and also hope that the joint interest of these two alliances in influencing European and African science successful in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Peter. Thank you very, very much, Peter. Just for information, for the next phase, we are certainly focusing on bibliometric material. So that will be very much a part of it, as you suggest. So highly appreciated. Thank you. We now invite our vice chancellors to make comments, make various remarks on the report itself, but also about their universities and how they look at membership of ARUA and so on. So each vice chancellor has 5 minutes. May we begin with Professor Bamuketi Pakin, Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Town.
Thank you very much, Professor Arte. And thank you to Professor Oma for the work and the presentation today. And Professor Masson, your reflections are very instructive. Thank you very much for sharing them. Let me start by saying, for us at UCT, ARUA is one of our key networks. It's our key networks, not only in terms of us, how we benefit, or just that we are members. We do our best to contribute to making it successful. And so it is a great pleasure today to be here at the launch of the University Profiles report, because of course we were involved in drafting the proposal that went to Carnegie. And this report is excellent, it's useful, and I'm sure it's going to help us as a network, as ARUA, moving forward. And I want to focus more on the reports rather than talking about UCT, because that's easy to Google. And I want to say, as an excellent benchmarking document, this ARUA Universities Profiles report sets the stage for the important strategic thinking that we need to do to set the direction for ARUA to make a real difference in the lives of people across Africa. We need to grasp the opportunity to investigate how we translate the information it contains into informed action. For instance, the report focuses on doctoral and postgraduate enrollments, degrees conferred, completion times, and the proportion of academic staff with doctoral degrees. And I would like to pose you a few questions, or to pose us a few questions that this report raises in my mind. As I went through the report, a few questions popped into my mind. And the first is, what does an increase in the number of doctoral and postgraduate degrees enable us to do as individual institutions, but as ARUA? As vice chancellors, we need to look beyond graduations. Our goal and the reason we formed ARUA is to make a difference in Africa and in how our continent participates in the global response to the many challenges we face around the world. And this leads to my second question. How do we benchmark the changes and benefits that arise from postgraduate study and degrees? A high enrollment of doctoral students may not translate into a higher proportion of working academics. For instance, it may not translate into high productivity in terms of innovative products and technologies that can serve Africa. It may not translate into launching new businesses or inform policymakers. It may not even translate into increasing the number of publications. As Professor Masson highlighted the fact that we need to have that data also recorded. A 2018 global Gallup poll reported that in countries with high levels of income inequality, less than half of the people surveyed said that science benefited people like them. By contrast, in regions where inequality was low, such as Northern Europe, the percentage who said science benefited most people was much higher. Gallup said a notable exception was China, where 82% of the people polled felt their standard of living was improving. Analysts attributed this belief to dramatic growth that has also brought broad-based economic optimism among the Chinese population. Of course, research productivity can be measured through the patents, publications, and citations that arise from the research. There is a benchmark we may need to add to our reporting, as highlighted earlier. And my third question is, how does an increase in the number of doctoral degrees benefit the continent? We can also consider ways of measuring the social responsiveness of our research, the types of problems that are addressed, and the scope, the advice and perspectives that we provide to policymakers, the business sector that benefits or are even born out of new patents and innovation, the jobs that are created or improved, the resulting impact on economic growth, the case studies of people who are directly or indirectly affected by the research we conduct and its outcomes. For example, in 2010, South Africans who knew they had HIV could expect to live to an average age of 56. Today, that life expectancy is more than 63 years. Because over the years, we have developed the world's largest antiretroviral treatment program and reduced the rate of mother-to-child transmission of HIV among pregnant women to as low as around 1%. While we continue to search for a vaccine for HIV, what we are learning through research is that research is allowing HIV-positive people to live longer. It allows them to live healthier and more productive lives today than they could have done 20 years ago. As business author Pelzu writes, from a thought leadership perspective, a benchmarking mindset does not just focus on bean counting. It is a problem-solving mind that can be strategic, interpretive, analytic, and progressive. Change agents with benchmarking mindsets have the facts they need to convey the clear message of transformation and make continuous improvement. So I leave you with this final question. What does a higher number of doctoral degrees enable us to be as institutions, as ARUA, and also to do for our continent and for the world? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Pakin. Thank you very much. May I now invite Professor Sizwe Mabizela, Vice Chancellor, University of Rhodes.
Program Director, Secretary General of ARUA, Professor Ariete. Carnegie Corporation of New York, Program Officer, Higher Education Research in Africa, Claudia Fritelli, esteemed guests, colleagues, and friends. Rhodes University is deeply privileged to be part of ARUA, a distinctive body of research-intensive universities in Africa. We welcome and appreciate the ARUA Research Profiles study and look forward to using it as a strategic tool to benchmark ourselves and improve our support of research and collaborations. We note the underrepresentation of women at master's and doctoral levels. We also note the underrepresentation of women at associate professor and full professor levels. We must make concerted efforts to remove all barriers that impede the progress of women and ensure that we support them to succeed in academia. We join with ARUA Universities in thanking the Carnegie Corporation of New York for making the inaugural meeting in Addis Ababa possible, as well as supporting the continuing research profile study of ARUA Universities. Rhodes University has benefited from the Carnegie funded University Administration Support Program Fellowship in developing one of our colleagues in research support. We have further selected a Carnegie-funded postdoctoral fellow, Dr. Tisema from Addis Ababa University, who will be spending a year with us starting in October, focusing on research and publication. These fellows are staff members from other ARUA member universities who are facilitated to take a break from teaching and admin duties to increase their research profiles. The ARUA Center for Water, which is hosted at Rhodes University, has flourished despite the lockdowns and financial cutbacks brought about by the global pandemic. UCRI-funded ARUA projects are actively proceeding, studying catchment areas in Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, Senegal, Rwanda, and Ethiopia, and applying a methodology which integrates social sciences into natural sciences with the aim of increasing impact and long-term uptake of research outcomes. The center is working closely with the N8 UK universities as a result of the ARUA initiative with this consortium. This leverages off the opportunities that this partnership has brought to the continent and consequently to Rhodes University. The center has also incorporated all of its international projects that are carried out under the Institute for Water Research at Rhodes under the ARUA banner. This includes the Leading Integrated Research for Agenda 2030 in Africa Catchment Champions Initiative, which brings together government representatives, academics, unemployed youth for the purpose of protecting urban rivers for sustainable development. Funded by the International Science Council and Network of African Science Academies, and also includes the establishment of the African chapter of the Society for Freshwater Science. Rhodes University has strengths in several research fields that overlap with other ARUA centers and the activities of partner universities within the ARUA fold. For example, our Institute for Nanotechnology Innovation, which is a leading research producer at Rhodes University. And at the moment, we are in the process of building a new state-of-the-art and expanded facility to house this initiative. ARUA partners can benefit from this. The Environmental Learning Research Center, which is the regional hub for environmental learning innovation, is at Rhodes University. A range of activities which are related to climate change and food security, including the Rhodes University Elevated CO2 Facility to study the plant responses to changes in atmospheric CO2 concentrations. And this is the largest experimental facility of its kind on the African continent. We have the Center for Biological Control, which focuses on biological methods of regulating the spread of alien invasive species. We have the African Studies Center, which is part of the DFG-funded Multiple Cluster of Excellence Network. We have the Institute for Social and Economic Research and the National South African Institute for Biodiversity, both of which are hosted at Rhodes University, which do fantastic research. And we also have several national research chairs spanning the additional areas of radioastronomy, medicinal chemistry and biochemistry, biotechnology and innovation, marine sciences, mathematics education, African languages, gender psychology, and the fine arts of Africa. And there are other cognate research areas and strengths that we would be glad to use in the service of growing collaborations with our partners across the African continent and beyond, and to support the ARUA objective of promoting postgraduate capacity on the African continent. We particularly encourage students across the continent to pursue their master's and doctoral studies at Rhodes University. We have fantastic facilities and excellent supervisors. Once again, we are delighted with the launch of this very important research today. I thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Sizwe. Thank you very, very much. Shall we move to Lagos? The Vice Chancellor, Oluwadoyin Ogundipe. So, Doyin, if you are present.
Thank you, Prof. Good afternoon to everybody. I went through the presentation. I want to say that concerning the grant from within the country, maybe the fault is from our side. It's more than what was presented. So we'll look at that very well. I want to appreciate Professor Ayete for getting everything together and presenting it for us to see where we are, so that we'll be able to work on what we have now to move forward. Definitely, the issue of PhD and postgraduate students is a major problem from this part of the country, because one, we don't have accommodation for our postgraduate students compared to what they have in Ibadan. And also we have other problems for postgraduate students in the University of Lagos. But in terms of research grants and availability of support from the university, we have a lot of support in that area. Then we remember that we have the ARUA Center, 2 centers of excellence, one for entrepreneurship and the other one for housing, that are doing very well. We also have the one for World Bank, 2 centers of excellence for World Bank that we are currently running. What we need to do is to encourage, maybe we have special intervention for the female postgraduate students. Maybe that will attract them more to Lagos. We look at that possibility, and we look at the possibilities of aligning ourselves with the presentation made by the one from Rhodes and Pretoria, and make sure that we improve on our visibility in that space. So I want to thank you for this, and wishing every one of us good interaction together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Ogundipe. May I invite now Professor Tawana Kupe from Pretoria, if he's online. Tawana, are you here? I don't see Professor Kupe. Can we move to Addis Ababa University, Professor Tassi Rodihana? Tassi, it looks like you are muted.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Ernest. I would like to thank Professor Ernest and Professor Barnabas for organizing this event and make us take a good lesson from this African Research University Alliance Universities profile. And I would like also to thank Professor Uma for excellently presenting the work and also for producing this report. And I also enjoyed the comments and the key issues raised by Professor Peter, and we learned a lot, and he gave us a very good highlight what ARUA has to do in the future. I see the overall this profiling of African universities as an eye-opening for the African universities, and African ARUA has done a very good starting work in profiling this African Research University as profiling. I think it is a very good lessons, and it focuses on mainly on inputs, the academic mix of degrees and the gender aspect. And these are very good, important inputs to produce knowledge in universities in Africa. But the report has to go beyond that. It should not be limited to this input. It should go up to publication and patents, and which Ernest has tried to show in the beginning. Such kind of report has to go further into that so that they can show us more what is missing and how we link these inputs to outputs. I think this report, and in general from ARUA, Addis Ababa University has learned a lot. When this data baseline was taken in 2007, we learned that Addis Ababa postgraduate program is huge compared to many other universities, particularly in the master's and PhD, but we haven't exploited to change that into a research output. This was the lesson that we get at the beginning of the ARUA summits. And after that, Addis Ababa University has changed its policy and has started to get good output out of that lesson. We have changed our policies that gears towards production of high impact journal articles. Particularly in our graduate program, we introduced that all PhD students must produce at least 2 published articles before graduation. We didn't have that policy before, and also we have put also obligations on staff to put to produce articles every 2 years, and by doing that, Addis Ababa University has improved its research output. And I'm sure we will see that the impact of ARUA on Addis Ababa University in the second phase, where we try to see 2018 to 2020, maybe the second phase. So I think Addis Ababa University has learned a lot from that. Addis Ababa University is the youngest university in ARUA. Among the ARUA universities, Addis Ababa University is the youngest. It established in 1950, but it is progressing very well, as it is the first university in the country and the pioneer university also in the country. It has produced more than 250 students so far. And our aim is to be the world-class universities and be among the leading universities in Africa and also the top in East Africa. And as a research university, we wanted to focus on producing competent graduates, not only graduation, but competent graduates who can win the labor market, who can be solving the societal problem, pursue problem solving, knowledge expanding research outputs, actively participating in scholarly community engagement in order to contribute to the national, regional, and global development. And to do that, I think our membership in ARUA will help us achieving this big mission. Addis Ababa University is running 2 of the Center of Excellence of ARUA, which are the ARUA Center of Excellence for Post-Conflict Societies and ARUA Center of Excellence for Good Governance. And as a member, also we participate in water and other Center of Excellences that are hosted by other universities. I think this will help Addis Ababa University also to engage more in research and learning from other African universities. Addis Ababa University has many other Center of Excellences which are hosting African students, like the African Center of Excellence for Water Management, the African Railway Center of Excellence, the Center for Innovation and Drug Development and Therapeutic Trial for Africa, which we call it CDT Africa. In this Center of Excellence are supported by the World Bank, and we are taking many African students to be trained at Addis Ababa University for masters and PhD. I think this also makes us to integrate Ethiopia with the rest of Africa. Usually Addis Ababa University, its historic activities, we have more collaborations with Europe and North America, but our collaboration with African universities was very low. But now we are turning our face also to have more collaboration with many African universities. I think ARUA will be also a vehicle for this. We are happy with the progress of the ARUA, but one comment that I have is that ARUA should be working more faster than this in profiling African universities. For example, now the report covers only 2015 to 2017, but if we are asked, requested, we can give up to 2020. You know, we're learning from the previous one, we make ready up to our data up to 2020. I think ARUA should not take too much time to enter into the second phase and try to assess, also profile the universities so that we can learn more and we can improve and we can use it for the enhancement of our university and also for the enhancement of our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tasu. I assure you that the second phase will begin sooner than you think. We are ready and we'll be coming to you within the next few weeks for data. Thank you very, very much. Shall we go back to Professor Tawana Kupe from University of Pretoria?
Thank you, Ernest, and good afternoon, colleagues. I'd like to thank everybody who's been associated with this study. It's actually quite instructive. I mean, some of the things that are raised by the study we generally knew and have known for a while. What is important about this study is the evidence base and the data that comes with it, and therefore throws into sharp relief the questions that we ought to answer. I think ARUA was created for a very specific purpose, as Ernest said, to ensure that Africa actually steps up to the table of knowledge production, and not just any kind of knowledge production and any kind of masters and doctoral candidates, but knowledge creators, if you like, that can actually have the impact to enable transformative futures for a better Africa that not only addresses its own problems, but also makes a contribution to the world. So I think, in my view, our big challenge is impact. Not just impact as measured in academic matrices and in the rankings, but impact in changing situations on the ground for a continent that is rich, but is poor in respect of the lives of its people and the resources it has at its end. It has at its disposal. So choosing our research agendas and actually training and educating researchers at various levels and strengthening that pipeline must be an effort towards the impact we want to achieve. In that way, colleagues, I think we'll address another challenge raised by a colleague earlier on. The challenge of dependency on others in order to mobilize for the research we need to do. I think we cannot be dependent on one source of research, i.e. international donor funding. I think what we need to do is to mobilize and leverage international donor funding from sources that traditionally have not funded research. That means in a sense, persuading our governments, our private fledgling, as they may be private sectors and others, to be able to contribute to the research mission. But they can only do so if they believe that we're going to have the impact that makes them also better contributors to sustainable development. So the one thing that the reason why it's important, I think, to address the question of the pipeline, masters and doctoral degrees and honors degrees in the South African context, is that one of the things we lack in Africa is critical mass and scale of researchers. I mean, if you twin together critical mass and scale of researchers with the right kind of research agendas, in other words, impactful research agendas, I think you address a very big gap in the knowledge creation space in Africa. Second, I think what you would need in order to ensure that this critical mass and scale of researchers on the continent, but collaborating with others internationally and globally, is research infrastructures. That we also lack. Investment in research infrastructures. And here by research infrastructures, I'm not talking about research infrastructures for the natural sciences only, but research infrastructures for multi and transdisciplinary areas and the social sciences where such are needed. I think that is another, and that requires also a considerable funding. Then aligned with research, the right kind of research agendas for sustainable impact and transformative impact, we would be able, if you like, to make a difference. So I'd like to make a few remarks in relation to how we see this, or how we're trying to implement this at the University of Pretoria in collaboration with African partners, and that is why we are part of ARUA and several other African networks. And that is why our project for research and for the university in general is called the African Global University. We are facing a crossroads in 2021, confronted with recurring issues such as the climate change crisis, global poverty, food insecurity, the biodiversity and environmental crisis, and all the areas that are addressed in the SDGs, which have been exacerbated by COVID. I think, as you know, COVID deepened the fault lines in our societies. In this regard, the investment in research is now much more critical than ever before. And here I mean impactful research. I think we know that the COVID-19 has resulted in unprecedented research and accelerated efforts towards effective vaccines. I think all local and global challenges require a similar effort, but you will not have that effort without the factors that I mentioned before. So what we've done at the University of Pretoria, in a sense, is to both begin to up our enrollments in the master's, doctoral degrees and honors degrees in specific targeted areas or in research domains, in disciplines, in multidisciplinary areas, creating transdisciplinary degrees that are aligned with an impactful agenda that will contribute to sustainable development. We've also, second, created 4 transdisciplinary research platforms: our Future Africa Institute and Campus, which you can see behind me. We've also created Engineering 4.0 Complex. We've also constructed a new 8-gallery art center. And also we are creating now a research park called Innovation Africa at UP. One thing that is going to be common in these 4 infrastructures is that they will pursue transdisciplinary research directed towards greater societal impact. They will work in collaboration with other researchers in South Africa, the rest of the continent, and that is why our ARUA Center of Excellence works with 4 partners in Ghana, in Kenya, as well as in Nigeria. They will also work with the global partners across the world. That is why in the Center of Excellence in ARUA, we work with Leeds University and are inviting on Montpellier and 608 other partners, because that is the critical scale and mass that, in a sense, will contribute to teaching a new generation of training and educating a new generation of researchers, choosing the right kind of agendas that are aligned and or overlap with the SDGs for sustainable development. And 3, actually addressing in the world the fact that knowledge can and will make a decisive difference for better futures. So we're really very excited in this regard, therefore, to be part of this community of African universities. And we hope this community of African universities, looking at the existing and emerging local and global challenges, is able to work collectively, collaboratively in partnerships, mobilizing resources from multiple sources and making a decisive difference. It can be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tawana. Thank you very, very much. May I now invite Professor Zeblon Vilakazi. Zeblon, Vice Chancellor of University of the Witwatersrand.
Thank you, Secretary General. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Just before I start, I'd like to thank you, the Chair, Secretary General, the representing Guild, Professor Masson, for your very thoughtful and insightful reflections. Tade Fratelli from Carnegie, who supported this project. I'd like just to say a few reflections, I won't be long, colleagues, on the excellent and wonderful presentation made by Professor Omar. Just to pick up a few things before I start, I'd just like to also say that as vets, we take this initiative as right front and center in our mission critical goals of ensuring that we play a pivotal part in being part of a broader collective of African universities that are oriented towards leapfrogging this continent into a knowledge and product generator and innovate to address some of the global challenges we face as the world. When the alliance was formed in March 2015, owing to its locality in Johannesburg, which is invariably the heart of Africa's commercial center and culture, Vets took it not as an obligation, but as an honor to be given the role of providing backroom support to the Secretariat in Ghana. And I think we will continue, if needed, to continue providing that service. We take this indeed as an honor and a privilege. Secretary General, you can be rest assured that if you have any complaints, please raise them with me and we will handle them in view of our obligations. Just on reflection of Professor Omar's report, I think some things came out screaming in front of me, and I think a lot has been addressed on that front. The one that is concerning, and I think one of the big issues that we have to contend with the world as manifest by the COVID crisis is inequality. And inequality manifests itself through knowledge asymmetry, technological asymmetry, and that will translate into the financial asymmetry as well. Because if you look at the STEM representation, to use the word broadly, I'm sure, Gerald, if you were to drill deeper into with a high level of granularity, you'll find that EBE, I mean, and in the engineering fields, have this gender imbalance. And if you go to the natural and computational sciences, like in particular physical and mathematical sciences, this becomes even much more exacerbated, which is a concern. I mean, it's not only a South African or African problem, it is a global problem. My own area of work as well, I mean, is notorious for having a low gender balance. And I think that's very, very important because, you know, if you look at all the drivers driven by tech companies on the West Coast of America, you know, they've largely drawn from universities that actually produce engineers, computer scientists. I mean, you look at all the apps, even the one that we're using, of these super billionaires that, you know, are the ones who come from those particular areas. So this asymmetry in the production of researchers and students and graduate students from the engineering fields is indeed the source, I think, the root source of the future inequalities in race, geography, and gender. So that is something that came out screaming. Granted, this report is a screenshot, right? That was 2019, so a report from 2015 to 2017. But I hope that numbers will have evolved in time, and indeed they will. I think you've seen changes already, as reported recently in the World University News, in terms of how African universities are gearing up, not only with just volumes, but with impact as well. A little bit about how VET sets itself apart from contributing towards providing the backroom support is at the launch, which I presented at the conference we had in Nairobi a few years ago, in 2018, was that we are proud of having been associated with the IBM research laboratories to launch the IBM quantum queue network that includes all ARUA universities. And actually, that is what IBM wanted to hear, that we are part of a much broader constellation of universities within the African continent that can take what I would call these leapfrog technologies to allow us to be part of the technological exponential, because we have missed on all the other waves of industrial, the recent rather, industrial and technological development. So therefore, ARUA can bring that scale to bear for us to be able to be part of this fast evolving technological exponential and be part of it, and not to become spectators and find ourselves, as you've done with the last two waves, in the backwash of these technological evolutions. And I'm delighted with the support of Ernest that we are able to be part of this new emergent field, which will actually unleash new economies of scale, how they will develop, we don't know to the state. Key to this, as you've observed with COVID, you'll not talk about, are issues of sustainable development as well, largely related to the climate exponential. How do you resolve it? There will be other crises that will come. COVID will come and go, but there will be other global pandemics and outbreaks that you have to contend with. And the question we go to ask ourselves, who of us is African research? How can we now, as a collective, pull all our resources to be able to even have the prescience to foresee them before they happen? So I think that I take it as a challenge for us to think strategically as to how we can actually predict some of these future challenges and crises, which we need to, because it is our gift as academics and scholars to be able to have that, clairvoyance in a way to see the future from our vantage point of view of being scholars in connection with our global partners. We shouldn't be caught off guard like COVID did. We must have our own capacity to develop our own mRNA facilities, and that must happen. And ARUA must be central to that. Likewise, with climate change. I think that these three big challenges that I've mentioned that connect us to the world cannot be solved. Us as ARUA alone and other African universities, we do need partners globally and across the world. So with that, Chair, I'd like to take this moment to congratulate ARUA members, congratulate everyone who worked very hard to put this report together. I think there are better days lying ahead for ARUA. We cannot walk as South African universities as vets this journey alone, but we'll walk with you and we'll go very far. There will be challenges, but I'm sure that the future looks bright as we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Zebulon. Thank you very, very much. Shall we move to University of Ghana with Professor Nana Bapia-Amfo, Acting Vice Chancellor, University of Ghana.
Thank you, Professor Ite, my former Vice Chancellor, and good afternoon to you all. I will start by saying that I would like to reaffirm University of Ghana's commitment to ARUA. I think it's a great alliance which will help the university to achieve its vision of becoming a research university. It's good to be in the right company where we can learn from each other and support each other to increase our research capacity on the continent. It's often said that African problems need African solutions, and so it's important that we work towards increasing our research output right here on the continent. UG will fulfill its obligations as a member of this alliance, even as we move forward together with this agenda in mind. I'd like to commend those who did the research and generated this report, and also to everyone involved in this launch, which has given us an opportunity to share some thoughts together as Vice Chancellors. So I will give some comments on the report. I'll also mention some gaps. And let me start with postgraduate student enrollment. The report indicated that postgraduate student enrollment as a percentage of overall enrollment at UG increased by just about 2% during the period 2015 to 2017. Now, this trend has continued to improve as UG has received several awards since 2017 to increase the quantity of postgraduate students. These awards include the 3 World Bank African Centers of Excellence funded in 2019. We had 2 renewals and 1 new center. And these centers are involved in training postgraduates in agriculture, basic sciences and health sciences, specifically in genetic medicine. We noted that UG, we are heavy on business, economics, and the management studies. And so this is really good for us to begin to build capacity in those areas that we haven't been too strong in. Now, the new Health Sciences African Center of Excellence will help UG to continue to increase its proportion of postgraduate enrollment in the medical and health sciences. And this actually grew by 5% between 2015 and 2017. We also have, through the Banga, building a new generation of academics in Africa, and this is funded by the Carnegie Corporation. We have supported graduate students, doctoral students through this program, mostly in the sciences, but also in the humanities as well. And then we have support from Andrew Mellon Foundation on the enhancing capacity in postgraduate education in the humanities. And here we focus on specifically on languages, arts, performing arts, and African studies. Indeed, the 3 African Centers of Excellence, they have a collective target of graduating 150 PhDs in the next 3 to 4 years. Certainly, we do have challenges, supervision challenges, and we have tried to have capacity building workshops to build up the capacity of our supervisors, and also we are making use of joint supervision to increase our capacity in this regard. There's one challenge that we have, and I'm sure that this happens in other places. We've identified delays in procurement of biomedical reagents, which are all currently imported. And that's a major threat to timely completion of PhDs in the sciences here at the University of Ghana. And we are implementing innovative means to overcome this national or regional challenge through direct contracts with overseas vendors. Procurement poses a broader challenge for biomedical research training in Africa. And this was highlighted in recent research by Egon Zender in partnership with the UK Medical Research Council. I can post the link to that report, and they said that African researchers have less money available through grants, but have to pay 5 times as much for nitrile gloves as in Europe. And so I believe that this is one development challenging area that ARUA and donor agencies can work together with member universities to reduce the regional and national infrastructural barriers to competitive research on the continent. Now, with regard to postgraduate research fellowships, the report stated that there were no postgraduate fellowships at UG, but indeed there have been some successful postgraduate fellowships here. Again, here we can talk about the Banga program, which have provided support for postdoctoral fellows. Specifically, also in 2015, there was funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research here at UG instituted a postdoctoral fellowship program to train future research leaders who would contribute to infectious disease control efforts. And several fellows from this training program joined UG faculty and are continuing, they are contributing to the training of postgraduate students. And then in 2016, there was support from Wellcome Trust Delta's program. The West Africa Center for Cell Biology of Infectious Pathogens offered postdoctoral fellowships to a number of fellows up to the tune of $150,000. They were to conduct high quality research leading to publications, and also contribute to the training of graduate students, and compete for external funding to pursue new research projects. And this has been quite successful. All the 3 African Centers of Excellence here at UG offer postdoc fellowships to recently qualified PhDs to train them in a mentored career program to prepare them to compete for faculty positions at UG and beyond. Research funding, also there was a gap there, and the quick search, the NIH reporter indicates that during that period, there were nearly $7 million to support 33 projects and sub-projects. And UG continues to improve on its research funding with current awards from a diversity of donors, including the NIH Wellcome Trust, World Bank, Carnegie Corporation, and Andrew Mellon Foundation. I must say that we haven't leveraged much on funding within the continent, and I believe that with the partnership here, we will begin to take more advantage of those. My final comment is on patents. I would like to mention here that UG has a policy to help researchers to patent their ideas and discoveries. And there are plans by the West Africa Genetic Medicine Center to strengthen the activities of the existing technology transfer office of the university, which is situated at our Office of Research and Innovation Development. And so in building the capacity of this unit, WACMEC will organize training seminars and workshops in collaboration with the private sector. Together with the technology transfer office, technology developed by faculty and students will be evaluated for their marketability. And the unit will provide technical assistance to UG faculty in the development of all the necessary documents for the protection of intellectual property and technological innovations. We have taken note of the gender imbalances and inequities. And these are areas that moving forward as we seek to find a balance between the subject areas, that's also a key area that we will look at. So thank you all for your attention. And once again, I'm happy to be in this great company. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Renova. Thank you very, very much. I'm happy to hear of UG's commitment to ARUA. Thank you. Shall we go to Stellenbosch and invite Professor Wim de Villiers, Vice Chancellor, Stellenbosch University.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ernest, and the African Research Universities Alliance for giving Stellenbosch University the opportunity to speak at the launch of this very insightful report today. Stellenbosch University, we're very proud to be a member of the ARUA network of eminent research-intensive universities on the continent, and we're honored to host the ARUA Center of Excellence in Energy. We're very excited to also to see how this Center of Excellence in Energy is increasingly collaborating with other African universities across the continent to build capacity and to bring African homegrown solutions to the continent. I'm going to frame my contribution about Stellenbosch University and its interaction with ARUA today using 3 Ps: people, platforms, and programs. And I'm going to start with our most valuable asset, and that's people. I mention this often, and I keep emphasizing it. It is a truism, but it is so. We can't do anything without our fellow humans doing the physical work. Well, that's actually for now, but because we have established a new school for data science and computational thinking at Stellenbosch University, and some of the AI experts may actually disagree with this point, but for the moment at least, it's staff and students who keep producing top-notch work under very challenging circumstances and also during the pandemic. It's the people who do the research and put in the long hours. They're at the core of our academic project. So it is important to invest in them. But we know that investment in students is actually decreasing. Funding from government is lacking. Our undergraduate students, they have the potential, vast potential, but they need funding. Our postgraduate students are our future research stars, and they also need financial support to advance knowledge in service of society. And that's a very important point. That is the core of the message that we at Stellenbosch University put out in our strategic framework and Vision 2040 at our centenary in 2018. We put out a bold vision, an aspirational, a stretch goal, a vision to be Africa's leading research-intensive university, globally recognized as excellent, inclusive, and innovative, where we advance knowledge in service of society. But investing in students is not only about funding, it's also about providing them with teaching and research academic staff who are the very best in their fields. And I'm proud to just speak about a few recent appointments that we've made. The first is Professor Elmi Muller, who has been appointed as the new Dean of the Faculty of Medicine and Health Sciences. And she's a pioneering A-rated clinician who performed the first HIV positive to positive kidney transplants in the world. And then Professor Tulio D'Oliveira, a world-renowned bioinformatician who identified a new variant, the beta variant of COVID-19 in South Africa in December, and Professor Kopano Ratele, the former director of the South African Medical Research Council's Men, Injury and Violence Research Unit that was appointed at our Department of Psychology. And then currently for Women's Month, we're running an online campaign about the women of Stellenbosch University, and the amount of talent is truly staggering. Moving to number 2, platforms. And when the pandemic hit, our staff and students had to be very agile to adapt and innovate, and we shifted platforms. Although hybrid learning has been a priority for the university even before the pandemic, we really had to move very quickly to online. And what was initially planned as a rollout for the next 5 years, we had to implement in 5 weeks. But this put everybody and everything under immense pressure on our staff and our students. But our main goal really had to shift. We had to complete the academic year in 2020. We did it by implementing a new acronym, ERTLA, Emergency Remote Teaching, Learning and Assessment, where all teaching was done online. And then as soon as the alert levels in South Africa changed, we were able to move to another acronym, ARTLA, Augmented Remote Teaching, Learning and Assessment, which is more of a hybrid option with some students in class, others online. And we assisted students with laptops where we could, as well as data. So what did that actually manage to do is we were able to finish our academic year successfully. We actually broke our own previous records with a number of qualifications that we had conferred. So now we've also launched an online onboarding system to proactively assist provisionally accepted students with their transition from school to university. And a further investment in platforms has been to create extended learning spaces, and we've invested in research in big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. The third P is programs. And I want to just briefly highlight some recent exciting developments at Stellenbosch University that really integrates very nicely with what is envisioned at ARUA. And the first is a school for data science and computational thinking that was founded about 18 months ago. But we've just now launched the School for Climate Studies. And this is very appropriate given the recent report by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, that really sketches a dire scenario. And it's essential for us as research-intensive universities to contribute to this ever-expanding field. The African Union Development Agency, AUDA NEPAD, in partnership with South Africa's Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the CSIR, and Stellenbosch University have now launched here a Center of Excellence in Science, Technology, and Innovation to upscale and commercialize homegrown innovations on the continent. And this is actually quite a unique position in Africa. It's one of the 5 centers of excellence, which are the AU's, African Union's instruments for leveraging knowledge and science-backed innovations to support accelerated implementation of the Agenda 2063. The other centers are focused on rural resources and food systems, climate resilience, human capital, and institutions development, and supply chain and logistics. and now the one at Stellenbosch University, or together with Stellenbosch University, Center of Excellence in Science, Technology, and Innovation. And we're also very much invested in the South Africa's Department of Higher Education's Future Professors Program under the leadership of Professor Jonathan Jansen. Professor Pumla Gobode Marikezela from our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, who holds the South African National Research Chair in Violent Histories and Transgenerational Trauma, recently received the Oppenheimer Memorial Trust Prize for 2 million rand for her proposal titled Aesthetics of Trauma, Poetics of Repair. And this deals with a rethinking of trauma in new terms, specifically focusing on historical trauma and its transgenerational repercussions. And the former Public Protector of South Africa and Stellenbosch University's Law Trust Chair in Social Justice, Professor Thuli Madonsela, continues a very important research and work on social justice. So briefly, what I wanted to show or just inform ARUA and my colleagues is that Stellenbosch University is committed to contribute to society in a very meaningful way as a global role player, and we very much look forward to increasing our collaborations with fellow members within the ARUA network on research topics beyond energy, and to partner with various stakeholders to bring real-world solutions where we have some influence. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very, very much, Vim. Thank you very, very much. There are 4 other vice chancellors listed here, but I don't see them online. We have Professor Nangisia from Dar es Salaam, Professor Ikanola from University of Ibadan, Professor Nanapoku from UKZN, and then Professor Ali Mbai from Sheikh Anta Diop. I do not see any of them online. If they are online, if they can just indicate that they are online. Okay, looks like they are not online. So shall I invite our main supporter in all of this, Ms. Claudia Fritelli from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, who has been extremely helpful in helping us to put this together. So Claudia, if you are still there, I invite you to make your comments. Thank you.
I am. Thank you so much. I would like to start by giving a huge congratulations and thanks to Secretary General Ernest Ayerti and Dr. Gerald Uma. And I would also really like to thank the Vice Chancellors today for taking time for this session. It's very much what we had envisioned for ARUA and for the publication, to have a chance to share learnings, to talk about the data, use the data as a point of discussion. And I have to say, we really miss coming to your campuses. It's been wonderful to see all the Vice Chancellors today, because it feels like it's been a long time. And this has worked out very efficiently, I have to say, despite all the COVID interruptions, to have you all together. So really appreciate your time. I've heard a lot of sharing of learnings. I've heard a lot of use of the data already for making institutional changes. And so I really think that this project has fulfilled its objectives, and the fact that we're continuing to support it, I know there will be ongoing opportunity to use this data for advocacy for ARUA as it was envisioned. Thank you also for the comments by Peter Masson. As you know, this project has a 14-year history, many of you, from Hirana, when we started with 8 universities. And this is something we really appreciate, the continuity and dedication over this long time period to be able to arrive at what has been produced so far. I would just like to say also, in going forward, as many have already talked about, this is an opportunity to think about the future and what other data points might be important. We've heard about research productivity. And I would also like to raise the topic of capacity building. We know that it's taken a huge amount of perseverance and persistence from both Ernest and Gerald to collect the data, many times going back to universities and vice chancellors. As many of you know, it's been an arduous process. And I hope that this is something that can change in the future with your support. We've heard some cases where even a vice chancellor was not found some of the data incorrect, but the data is coming for your institution. So if you can help us with the teams that are providing the data and really work on that. And we have support in the new grant for capacity building. So how that can best be used is something that you can really help us with, so that, as somebody said, it would be good to have the data in a much quicker time frame, since the latest is really from 2017. We know the COVID period obviously caused a lot of interruption. And we're also very pleased to have this benchmark before COVID, so that during the COVID years, we can see what kind of impact it has made. I would also just like to mention another project that the corporation is supporting with the Inter-University Council of East Africa and the organization ESSA and the Association of African Universities, to look at the demographics of faculty in East Africa. So there will be some complementarity of data from the overlapping universities of the IUCEA member universities and ARUA Universities in East Africa. So we look forward to working together with them as well. So again, a huge thank you. I really appreciate all the comments. I'm not going to comment on the details of the report because I think they've already been covered. We were really pleased to see this. We've also used it, as I said, in our own funding decisions, including this upcoming board meeting, where we were able to defend our partner universities based on some of the findings from the ARUA report. And I know that other funders have used the data, especially from Hirana, in the past. And so we will continue to share this with other funders when they ask us our opinions about partners and universities in Africa. So again, huge thank you to Gerald Uma for the work and the persistence, and to Professor Ayerti, and to all the vice chancellors, and also the teams at the universities who have provided the data. Sometimes there's been multiple teams, multiple people, and we hope that's something that can be improved in the future, the teams that are actually collecting the data. I would just like to add that the coordinators from Hirana have all become very senior level policy experts in the African context. And so this is a byproduct of the project. Gerald Uma himself had started as a coordinator back on Hirana in 2017 and is now director of planning at UP. So we hope you see this as a valuable project as well, to train your own staff in data collection and cleaning and analysis. So thank you again. I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Thank you very, very much for all your help in putting this together. I think since we are extending thanks to people, it will also be proper to thank my colleagues, Dr. Emmanuel Edudanso and Dr. Emmanuel Abe, who have worked with the material that Gerald provided into having a shorter version that we are going to launch today. So the two Emmanuels at the office, thank you very, very much for your help. Let me now turn back to our board chair, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe. When Barnabas spoke earlier, he was opening the webinar. I didn't give him a chance to talk about Makerere University, where he's vice chancellor. So I will invite Barnabas to speak briefly about Makerere University, and then go on to launch the report. In doing the launch, he will just make his remarks, and then Emmanuel will do as well an animation showing the report itself for our viewers. So Barnabas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ernest. And once again, I want to thank Professor Uma for the report, which was quite concise and giving very important information about the state of our universities as far as research and graduate training are concerned. I have listened very carefully to the feedback from the vice chancellors, and I think what I can conclude is that there are very similar issues that we are facing as the universities. But briefly about Makerere University, I think the report really highlights the issues that we have, and I think it is quite accurate. I can only say that We have, of course, been victims of the World Bank policies of the 80s when we had to admit large numbers of undergraduate students in order for the university to survive. But we have since come up with a new strategic plan. We have a new strategic plan in 2020-2030, where we have decided that we must move towards being a research-led university. And one of the things we are going to do is to considerably reduce the number of undergraduate students and increase the number of graduate students. Luckily for us, I would like to say that the government has started providing considerable resources for research and also for improving the infrastructure, the research infrastructure at the university. And I think that we will be able to make tremendous improvements with that kind of support. But of course, collaboration within ARUA, I think, is a key. And as I said earlier, we are already seeing the results of this collaboration. We are seeing our researchers collaborating within the centers of excellence, and I think we should continue doing that. I think we should continue benchmarking each other and seeing where there are best practices within our universities so that we can learn from each other and support each other in this endeavor. So Mackay University is delighted about this report, and we will definitely take the results of the report seriously and use them in our in the improvements that we want to make. Luckily, I have seen a few of the Mackay people attending, and I can see also that there are some members of our council who are attending, and the message has been sent, and I think they will all understand the importance of doing certain things so that we can improve our research profile and also the capacity to do research and publish. I don't think I need to say much more than that. I must, however, thank you, Ernest, and your team for this work. I wanted to thank Carnegie Corporation for holding a hand with us. I would like to think that after the presentation of the next one, it would be a good idea for us to have an annual review, an annual report on the state of our universities as far as the research is concerned. I think it is a good beginning, but we need to make it a bit more regular. So that's what I would like to say, and maybe we can now move on to launching the report.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is now my honor and privilege to launch the profile of the ARUA Universities, Research Universities, 2015 to 2017.
Thank you very, very much. Emmanuel, are you going to take us through the pages? So what we've done is do a summarized version, a much shorter version of the report, which we will give away to all those who are interested in knowing more. Say, ARUA at a glance. So with this short document, I think about 16 pages, you can flip through and know everything that you would like to know about the member universities who have provided data. This is what we'll be using for our advocacy work. This is what we'll be using for PR activities for ARUA. And we will be sending copies, both printed copies and as well as, and then the soft copy you'll be able to have access to and use as you find appropriate at your universities. And so we thank you very, very much for attending today's launch. We are very, very happy that you were able to make it. I'm particularly happy about the number of vice chancellors that made it to today's launch. I do believe everything that you've said in terms of commitments that you've made to support ARUA, and we will do our best at the Secretariat to also give you the kind of ARUA that we've all been working for. So I thank you all very much for your attendance, and I look forward to working with you in the coming years.
Thank you, and bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Colleagues.
So Peter, thank you very much for your comments. Gerald, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you all, Vice Chancellor.
Bye, colleagues.
Bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.